Welcome to this week's edition of Pit Stop. With you today is Jaco from Merwe, myself, the Citizens Head of Motoring, and I'm joined by our online reporter, Charl Bosch. On the agenda this week is two new models, one updated and one the addition of a diesel powertrain in South Africa. Charl was at the unveiling of the updated Isuzu MUX last week. And then we're also going to look into a diesel derivative, or should I say three diesel derivatives, to the Kia Sportage range. But let's start with the MUX. Charl, if we can categorize the MUX, it's basically a body-on-frame that shares a platform with the D-Max, the Isuzu Bakkie. And it rivals the Toyota Fortuner, which is, of course, the market leader, the Ford Everest, and the Mitsubishi Pajero Sport. But first of all, tell us what has changed on the MUX and how does the pricing look?
Well, so they've changed. It's basically just a mild cosmetic overhaul where they've changed some aspects of the front. They've got this strange obsession with a new grille color. They call it magnetite grey. And it's got a magnetite grey grille. It's got magnetite finishes on the roof rails, accents inside. And very, very interestingly, they have also the basic model, so you get three trim levels. On the range, there is the LS, the entry-level model, the middle-of-the-range LSE, and the top spec Onyx. The LS now comes with 18-inch wheels, which was as a result of buyer demand, according to Isuzu. And the top-of-the-range Onyx still has 20-inch wheels, but it's a bit different in terms of design. And we've also got two new models in the lineup. There is a 1.9 diesel, so I mentioned you get in the D-Max, which arrives in the third or fourth quarter of the year. And then as a result also of buyer demand, they've added a 4x4 version of the middle-of-the-range LSE. Previously, if you wanted a 4x4 MUX, you could only go for the LS or the Onyx, but now there is a LSE. That's the version we drove on launch most of the time. It will cost you just over $909,000, and the Onyx is $928, the flagship version, and the entire range starts at $784,000, excluding the 1.9, whose pricing is not yet known.
That's what I was just going to touch on. That 1.9 could be key for them going forward, because if you compare the entry-level pricing of the current 5-model range, if you look at the market leader, the Toyota Fortuner, it comes in at a far lower entry price, and also the Mitsubishi Pajero Sport comes in at $744. The Fortuner comes in at $632, if I'm not mistaken. So do you reckon, I suppose everyone needs a bit of a volume seller, and that 1.9, although it will have a lot less specification and capabilities probably, just the price point will make it a much more appealing product?
Absolutely. It will eventually rival the 2.4-litre Fortuner. The interesting thing is you get 110 kilowatts with that 1.9, same as the Fortuner's 2.4. Torque is a lot less, 50 Newton meters less. It'll only be available with rear-wheel drive, and will only be available with the auto gearbox, unlike the Fortuner, which can be have with a manual in its basic model. Like I said, we don't know what pricing is yet. We can only speculate. Probably, don't take my word of it, it's only speculation at this point, probably under 700,000. How it will stack up compared to the 3-litre, we don't know, because South Africans love top-of-the-range versions, and they don't always go for basic versions. So we'll have to wait and see. But it will probably be a deal breaker, maybe, because Isuzu, to be honest, needs it when you look at the sales volumes.
If you look at the market share, although obviously always the Isuzu D-Max is part of the top 3 Bakkie sellers in South Africa, along with the Ranger and the Hilux. But the MUX space, it's like they've never been able to make up ground there. And you always have your eye on world sales in other markets. And you were just telling me today that the MUX was such a good seller. It's always been a good seller in Australia, but how well it did there last month. Number one seller there, body on frame. And it's just very interesting that it's doing so well there, and it's never really gained that much traction in South Africa.
It's something we cannot understand. So just to put for listeners into perspective, the best-selling body-on-frame bakkie-based SUV in Australia is the Toyota Prado. One of the worst sellers is the Toyota Fortuner, which we can't understand. It's a complete reversal. But the MUX has always been the second best seller. Last month, though, they sold 1,096 MUXs in Australia, which is the best seller. We don't understand why the MUX is such a, if I can put it, poor seller. We can speculate long. Maybe it's because it's not built in South Africa, unlike the D-Max. But then again, the Everest is also no longer built here, whereas Fortuner is. So we can't understand why. We have no idea, as you said, how good the D-Max has been selling, and the MUX is just not getting there.
One thing we don't have to speculate anymore is whether or not the local Kia Sportage lineup will have a diesel derivative. Well, they did roll out one, or should I say three last week, which was very interesting. It's a bit of the market space, the mid-SUV kind of range, where not that long ago, diesel offerings were very scarce, with VW deciding not to bring in the diesel Tiguan, the Ford Kuga, who had a diesel derivative, disappearing altogether. And then also when Kia rolled out the new Sportage last year, they opted or started off initially without any diesel derivatives. They had plans going forward, but you never know with world demand and where we sit in the food chain on the global scene, which isn't very high for some brands. Whether you will get it or not, well, last week they surprised by rolling out 3 derivatives, and unlike sister company Hyundai, who before the new Sportage was launched, who rolled out the new Tucson with a single diesel derivative, which was the flagship of the range. But at the time, that was 700,000 Rand, and that price has only gone up. Now, what Kia has done with the Sportage, they've rolled out 3 derivatives. They've rolled out a LX, which is priced at 597. They've rolled out like a mid-spec EX, which is 651. And then also a GT Line Plus at 735, which will be sort of the direct competitor to the Hyundai Tucson. Charl, never mind Dieselgate and all the bad rap diesel has gotten over the last few years. South Africans do love their diesels. Eh?
We do. If you think about it, it's still more of a viable source of alternative fuel over petrol in that regard than electric or plug-in hybrid. We recently saw the latest March, I have to admit, sales figures from what NAAMSA released, and it showcased that, ironically enough, people are still buying electric cars over plug-in hybrids more. But it will never go away. South Africans, given how everything is going with load shedding and so on, it's either petrol or diesel. And if you think about the benefits that's still associated with diesel when it comes to long distance and so on, driving the torque delivery, the power delivery, it was a right move from Kia. It was an expected one, and I think they're going to reap the benefits of this.
And Kia, of course, they're very honest about bringing this back. They say, we don't know how long diesel's going to last. We can't look into the crystal ball and say, put a number on it in terms of years. But they're saying if it's available to them at the moment, they will sell it. And obviously this diesel Sportage is a different engine from the one in the Tucson, which is a 2-liter. This one is a 1.6-liter, also manufactured in Europe. And yeah, I think it's a very interesting addition. And all of a sudden, the mid-SUV space looks a bit different with the powertrains on offer, because Kuga obviously still isn't back yet, or even close to any kind of a return, or even rumored to be returned. But the VW Tiguan, it's got a diesel powertrain. Now the Sportage, 3 diesel derivatives, and of course the top spec Tucson. So very interesting indeed going forward. One car that won't have diesel is the new Mazda CX-60. Very exciting model that was just showcased to the media last week. But you will have to wait for next week to hear all about that with Mazda. It feels like a long slumber they've been in, but they are firmly back in contention, and we will bring you everything from our first drive at the new Mazda CX-60. You were listening to Pit Stop. I'm Jaco van der Merwe, and I was joined by Charl Bosch for this week's edition. Thank you very much.